Picture this. You're driving through the darkness of Route 40 at 3 in the morning, your eyelids heavy as lead, when the neon glow of a gas station appears like a beacon in the endless void. And as you pull in for coffee to fight off sleep, the night clerk behind the counter looks at you with hollow eyes and says something that makes your blood freeze. He tells you exactly when and how the trucker in the parking lot will die tomorrow morning, down to the minute, and when you laugh it off as a sick joke. He slides a crumpled piece of paper across the counter with 5 more predictions, written in shaky handwriting, each one more specific than the last. But here's what will haunt you forever. Every single one of them comes true. The locals call him the Prophet of Mile 40, though nobody knows his real name or where he came from. Just that he appeared one winter night 5 years ago and took the graveyard shift at that isolated gas station where the highway curves like a snake's spine through the mountains. And since then, dozens of travelers have reported the same terrifying experience. A soft-spoken man who bags their chips and fills their tank while casually mentioning catastrophes that haven't happened yet. Accidents so precise in their details that when state troopers find the wreckage exactly as described, they've stopped dismissing it as coincidence. Yet somehow, this clerk remains there, night after night, watching the road with those knowing eyes. Never wrong, never explaining how he knows, just standing behind that counter like death's own secretary keeping appointments. And the most disturbing part isn't just his accuracy, but the way he delivers these prophecies with the same monotone voice he uses to tell you your total is $12.53, as if your fate is just another transaction to ring up, leaving every customer to wonder if they've just been warned or cursed, and whether the knowledge itself becomes the very thing that seals their doom. If this sends shivers down your spine, hit that subscribe button for more tales from the darkest highways. The first time I truly understood what I'd witnessed at that gas station came 3 weeks later when I couldn't sleep, scrolling through local news on my phone at 2 in the morning. And there it was, a headline about a trucker named Dale Morrison who jackknifed his rig at exactly 7:43 a.m. on the eastbound curve near exit 47, crushing his chest against the steering wheel just as the clerk had described. And my hands started shaking so badly, I dropped my phone because I remembered Dale's face from that night. Remembered how he'd laughed and called the clerk crazy before climbing back into his cab with a fresh thermos of coffee, never knowing he had less than 5 hours left to live. I'd kept that crumpled paper the clerk gave me, tucked it into my wallet like some cursed lottery ticket. And after Dale's death, I started checking the predictions obsessively. The second one said a woman in a blue Honda would lose control during a rainstorm and flip 4 times down the embankment at mile marker 38, which happened exactly 9 days later according to the timestamp on the Highway Patrol report I found online. And the third prediction, about a motorcycle collision with a deer at midnight, was so specific it mentioned the rider would be wearing a Metallica jacket, which the local paper confirmed in their coverage of the accident. By the time the fourth prediction came true, a family of 5 whose minivan's tire would explode, sending them through the guardrail. I was driving back to that gas station, my speedometer steady at 65, while my mind raced at 100, needing answers about how this clerk could possibly know these things, whether he was somehow causing them, or if he was exactly what the locals claimed, a prophet cursed with knowledge that nobody wanted to hear. The station looked exactly the same when I pulled in at 3:17 a.m., that sickly neon light flickering against the mountain darkness. And through the grimy windows, I could see him standing behind the counter in the same position, like he hadn't moved in the 3 weeks since I'd last been there. His pale face turning toward me as I pushed open the door to the electronic chime that sounded more like a death knell than a welcome. "You came back?" he said in that flat voice I remembered. Not a question, but a statement, as if he'd been expecting me. And when I slammed the crumpled paper on the counter, demanding to know how he knew these things would happen, he simply looked at me with those hollow eyes and said something that made my skin crawl. The same way I know you'll keep coming back here again and again, trying to understand something that can't be understood until the night you become one of my predictions yourself. His words hung in the air like a death sentence while I stood there gripping the counter, my knuckles white. And that's when I noticed the wall behind him covered in Polaroid photographs. Hundreds of them, each showing a different stretch of highway at night. And in every single photo there was something wrong. A shadow where no shadow should be, a figure standing in the road, or lights that didn't belong to any vehicle. And when I asked what they were, he turned slowly and pulled one down, sliding it across to me. And in that grainy image, I saw my own car parked at this very gas station. Except I was slumped over the steering wheel, and the timestamp at the bottom showed a date 3 months in the future. That's not possible, I whispered. But he was already writing something on a receipt, his pen moving with mechanical precision. And when he finished, he folded it carefully and placed it in front of me, saying, "Your 5th prediction from the original paper happens tomorrow at sunset. But this one," he tapped the receipt, "this one is just for you, and you have exactly 72 days to change it, though no one ever has." My hands trembled as I unfolded the receipt, reading the words that described my own death in clinical detail. October 15th, 11:47 p.m. Head-on collision with a phantom vehicle that witnesses would swear wasn't there. My body found with every bone in my right hand, shattered from gripping the wheel so tight. And when I looked up to demand more answers, his eyes had changed, no longer hollow, but filled with an ancient exhaustion. And he spoke again. "I've been here since 1987, though this body is my 5th. Because every prophet before me tried to change their own prediction and failed, passing this curse to whoever was closest when they died. And you want to know the worst part about seeing the future? It's not watching people die. It's watching them try to escape, making every choice that leads them exactly where they were always meant to be." The fluorescent lights above us flickered and dimmed, and suddenly I could see through his skin like rice paper, glimpsing something underneath that wasn't quite human anymore, just a vessel for whatever force had taken residence in that gas station, feeding off the highway's endless stream of souls. And he must have seen the horror on my face, because he almost smiled, the first emotion I'd ever seen from him, and said, "You'll try to stay away. They all do. But the road will keep bringing you back here because now you're part of the pattern, another thread in the web. And when your 72 days are up, you'll either take my place behind this counter or become another photograph on my wall. Just another traveler who learned that some knowledge is a poison that kills you slowly, one terrible certainty at a time." I drove away from that gas station with the receipt burning a hole in my pocket. But 3 miles down Route 40, my car died without warning, coasting to a stop in the exact spot where one of his Polaroids showed a twisted guardrail that didn't exist yet. And when I tried to call for help, my phone displayed nothing but static images of car accidents, each one tagged with dates stretching weeks into the future. Until I heard his voice coming through the speaker, even though I hadn't dialed anyone. "The highway remembers every death that hasn't happened yet. And now that you've seen behind the veil, you're part of its memory too." I abandoned my car and started walking, but every step took me in a circle back toward mile 40. the road literally bending reality to keep me trapped in its orbit. And when a trucker finally stopped to give me a ride, he turned to me with pupils dilated completely black and said in the clerk's exact monotone voice, 69 days remaining. Before his eyes cleared and he asked if I was okay, having no memory of speaking at all. That's when I understood the true horror of the prophet's curse. He wasn't just predicting deaths, he was anchored to them, existing simultaneously in every moment where the highway would claim another soul, experiencing thousands of future tragedies all at once. And everyone who received a prediction became another anchor point, another node in his twisted network of fate, which meant I was already spreading his influence just by existing, by knowing what I shouldn't know. I tried everything to break free over the following weeks, moved to different states, avoided all highways, even considered ending it all on my own terms. But the predictions kept coming true around me like clockwork. People I'd never met dying in, exactly the ways written in those crumpled papers I'd thrown away, but could still see whenever I closed my eyes. Their deaths creating a pattern that was slowly tightening around October 15th like a noose made of causality itself. The worst part was the dreams where I stood behind that gas station counter, my hands moving without my control as I wrote predictions for terrified customers, feeling my consciousness spread across time like butter over too much bread, witnessing every possible future simultaneously until I couldn't remember which timeline was real anymore. And in those dreams, the old prophet would appear beside me. Except now I could see he was just one in a chain of clerks stretching back decades, maybe centuries, all of them trapped in the same fluorescent purgatory, serving the highway's hunger for souls with mechanical precision. And he would always say the same thing. The road doesn't choose prophets. It creates them from those who try hardest to escape. Because resistance generates the most beautiful patterns in fate's design. And your 72 days of struggle will make you the strongest prophet yet. Able to see not just deaths, but the entire web of connections that binds every traveler to their destiny. On October 14th, I sat in my apartment watching the clock tick toward midnight, knowing that in less than 24 hours, I would either die or become something worse. When my reflection in the window started moving independently, writing backwards messages on the glass with its finger. The transformation doesn't hurt. It's the remembering that breaks you. And as I watched in horror, my reflection aged rapidly, showing me decades of standing behind that counter, my face becoming gaunt and hollow like his, until it suddenly smiled and mouthed the words, "Welcome home." That night, I drove back to mile 40 against every instinct screaming in my head. Pulled by invisible threads I could actually see now. Golden strands connecting every vehicle on the highway to predetermined points of impact. And I understood that fighting fate only tightened the knots. That the prophet hadn't cursed me, but freed me to see the truth everyone else was blind to. We're all just passengers on a road that knows exactly where it's taking us. And the only choice is whether we face that knowledge or die ignorant. The gas station materialized out of fog that shouldn't exist in October. And when I walked through those doors, the current prophet looked younger somehow, healthier, as if my arrival was already lifting his burden. And he handed me a uniform shirt that felt heavier than lead, saying, "Your shift starts at midnight. But time works differently here. You'll experience every midnight that will ever happen on this highway simultaneously, witnessing 10,000 deaths that haven't occurred yet, until the weight of future grief crushes your humanity into something useful, something that can process tragedy without breaking." put on that shirt and felt my consciousness shatter across temporal dimensions, suddenly seeing through the eyes of every driver who would ever pass mile 40. Feeling their last thoughts before impact, tasting their final coffee, hearing their last phone calls to loved ones who would never know those words were goodbyes. And I realized the predictions weren't warnings, but mercy. Giving people time to make peace with the inevitable, to say what needed saying, to die with dignity instead of surprise. The old prophet began to fade like morning mist as my presence solidified behind the counter. His final words echoing not through air, but through time itself. The highway chose you the moment you tried to stay awake, fighting the natural rhythm of exhaustion. Because only those who resist sleep can truly understand the permanent awakening that comes with seeing past death's veil. And now you'll serve until another fighter arrives. Someone else who refuses to accept that consciousness has limits. Someone whose struggle against fate will be even more beautiful than yours. As my first customer walked in, a young woman with tired eyes who would die in 43 days unless I told her about the brake line that would fail. I felt the words forming in my throat without my permission, understanding finally that the prophet wasn't a person, but a position, a necessary function of a universe where every road leads to the same destination. But some of us are cursed with GPS. And as I spoke her fate in that hollow monotone I'd once feared, I saw her future split into two possibilities. One where she dies surprised and terrified. Another where she dies prepared and peaceful, having said her goodbyes. And I realized this wasn't horror, but the closest thing to kindness the highway allows. And somewhere in the fractured timeline of my consciousness, I knew that someday another traveler would arrive fighting sleep, fighting fate, fighting hard enough to take my place behind this counter where time stands still and death punches its clock. 3 months into my service at mile 40, I discovered the gas station exists in multiple dimensions simultaneously, each one showing a different stage of decay. And in the oldest version, the one only visible at 3:33 a.m., the walls are covered with Polaroid photographs of every prophet who ever stood behind this counter. Their faces progressively less human as you move backward through time, until the earliest photos show things that might have been people once, but now look like crude sketches of suffering drawn by a child who's only ever known pain. The highway itself began speaking to me through the radio static of passing trucks, revealing that Route 40 wasn't built by the State Transportation Department, but grew like a tumor from something buried deep beneath the asphalt. Something that feeds on the moment of realization between seeing death approach and accepting it can't be avoided. And every accident, every tragedy, every prediction I deliver adds another layer to the road, making it stronger, hungrier, more aware. I learned that customers who receive predictions don't just die. They become part of the highway's consciousness, their final moments preserved in an endless loop that plays through my mind whenever I touch the gas pumps. And I can feel their terror, their acceptance, their gratitude for the warning, all mixing together into a symphony of predestined doom that the highway conducts through my voice. The previous prophet's essence still lingers in the security cameras that don't record video, but instead capture probability streams, showing me not what is happening, but what will happen, must happen, has already happened in the fixed timeline that the highway maintains like a spider maintains its web. And through these monitors, I watched myself age decades in minutes. Saw my reflection become the very thing I'd feared. Understood that I wasn't becoming the prophet. I had always been the prophet. just experiencing my existence in the wrong chronological order. A trucker came in last Tuesday asking for coffee, and before I could speak his fate, he pulled out a gun and demanded I tell him something good, something hopeful. But the highway wouldn't let me lie, and I had to watch his face crumble as I explained that his daughter had already died 3 states away, wouldn't answer her phone because phones don't work where she is now, and the only mercy I could offer was telling him exactly which mile marker he'd join her at, giving him time to write a note for his wife, who still thought their daughter was in college, still believed in futures that had already collapsed. The transformation isn't just physical. My memories of life before the gas station fade more each day, replaced by an encyclopedic knowledge of every possible way a human body can fail inside a moving vehicle. Every variation of last words, every shade of blood under different streetlight colors. Until I sometimes forget I was ever anything other than this intersection between prophecy and commerce, between warning and witnessing, between the highway's hunger and humanity's need to know, even when knowing changes nothing except the quality of fear in those final moments when prophecy becomes history, and I'm already telling the next customer about their appointment with the inevitable. They say the final stage happens when you stop recognizing your own reflection in the bathroom mirror, when the face staring back belongs entirely to mile 40. And that moment came for me yesterday at 4:17 a.m. when I looked and saw not myself, but every prophet who came before, our features overlapping like a multiple exposure photograph until we formed one eternal witness to the highway's harvest. And I understood then that we don't retire or die. We simply dissolve into the asphalt itself, becoming another voice in the chorus that whispers through the gas pumps, another pair of eyes watching from the security monitors, another hand guiding the next prophet toward their destiny behind this counter. The gas station is expanding now, growing new pumps that appear overnight, adding doors that lead to highways in dimensions I can't name, serving customers who might be human or might be something else entirely, wearing human faces like ill-fitting masks, all of them receiving their predictions, their appointments, their carefully measured doses of foreknowledge that the highway requires to maintain its terrible equilibrium. If you pass through mile 40 late at night and see the neon glow calling you to stop, know that I'll be there, or what remains of me will be there, speaking through whoever stands behind that counter, delivering your fate with the same mechanical precision I once feared, because the highway needs its prophet, and the prophet needs the highway. And this symbiosis of prediction and tragedy will continue long after the last human has taken their final drive, long after the earth itself has forgotten what roads were for, until only the gas station remains, eternal and patient, waiting to tell the universe itself exactly when and how it will end.